Hello and welcome. My name is Jared Helfand, Senior Solution Engineer at Celonis, and today I want to talk to you more about the Celonis Execution Management System, or EMS. Through the EMS, we're going to show you a couple of things in today's demo. First is how we're able to connect to your data and then measure your processes against the KPIs that you've set for them. From there, get a better understanding of where within the process there are issues or gaps that are causing us to miss those KPI targets. And then lastly, I want to show you how we can actually take actions to close those gaps and get back on target and start exceeding the KPIs that we've set for ourselves. Now, for the purposes of the demo, I want to talk through the software development lifecycle. And the big reason is because recent studies have come out and said that 93% of companies are reporting that digital is critical to achieving their goals. Technology leaders are coming to the forefront of their organizations and leading change. And with all of that comes these issues of understanding how to properly manage the ever-growing technology teams coming into play. Now, as I switch my screen to that demo, the first screen we're going to see here is our executive dashboard for software engineering. Now, this is something that a CFO would look at. And for the purposes of the CFO, right, they probably get status reports all the time, finding out either the project is over budget or it's behind schedule. Yeah, you reach out to your project manager to find out what the cause is, and they're going to tell you either they need more time, they need more budget, or they need more resources. Right? And studies show that typically when a technology project is falling behind, adding programmers doesn't help out the project. It actually slows it down more, as I need to begin to teach individuals how to properly join the team. Now, something that Celonis is able to help with is getting an understanding of why it is that we're behind, right? As we look here, we may see that we have 16% rework rate. And what you're probably saying to yourself is, well, that rework rate is obviously just cause, because maybe we need better workers, maybe we need better training. But what I'm going to start showing you in the next few screens is that that's not the case. It's not simply that we need better workers, but there may be something more in there. And this is something that only Celonis and process mining can show. Analytical tools can show you how many projects we have. What are our total stories, right? But only Celonis is able to show you what is the rework rate in the process. Now, as a CFO begins to question, why am I not at the speed I want to be? I'm going to go talk to a process analyst to get a better understanding of what is really going on in my process. Now, as a process analyst that's looking at the process, the first thing I'm going to do is do a visual inspection. And what you're seeing in front of you is an X-ray into your process that Celonis can provide you. The first thing we're going to do is extract your data and populate it in this view by using only 3 key pieces of information. A primary key, such as a story ID, a timestamp, as well as a process or step name, such as sprint assigned, dev assigned, story approved, story closed. And that will aggregate all the different stories into their most common flows. So you can see here, the one in front of you is occurring about 48% of the time. And this is the most common flow. But as we expand out to see all the different variations, we'll see that it's not as straightforward as previously thought. But I don't want to necessarily focus on all of those. I want to just focus on some of the lower hanging fruit, such as this second most common variant that occurs 15% of the time. So we'll see the dots represent the story in the process. Now they'll get created, and as they're going through, they'll find their way to the dev, moving them to in progress. After it's being moved to in progress, the manager comes in and he says this is not good enough and pushes it back so that the developer can continue working on it before it ends up going through the rest of the cycle. Now, if we think about what we had seen previously on that dashboard slide, one of the biggest things we want to work on is figuring out how we can lower the rework rate so that we can get these stories through to finish quicker. And we're seeing here happening 15% of the time is obviously something we don't necessarily want to happen. But I want to show you one more different variation. So his fourth most common variant is you end up going through the same process, but instead of having the rework, it's actually going to skip over the story approved stage. It's going to move directly from story ready for review into story closed. Now, this is just another example of activities that are happening in the process that we are trying to avoid at all costs, because we know as developers and as project managers that any bugs found later on in the development cycle are going to be significantly costlier to solve than bugs found during development. So once I've gone through and found some areas for improvement, what I'm going to do next is move on and see if I can add some additional data to my analysis to get a better understanding of what is exactly going on. Now, as we dig deeper into the analysis, the screen should look pretty similar to what we just saw. On the left is that same variant explorer, but now on the right is some automatic analyses that have been brought about by Celonis. The first one I want to look at is the root cause for productivity lag. And I'll see here some of the main causes are the rework path, tickets not being added to the backlog, and tickets being moved back into a sprint after they've already been approved. Now, let's filter on the rework path and just see what happens to the variant explorer. We can see here, it filters on the 15% of cases that go from in progress to ready for review, back over to in progress after a failed testing step. Now, I'm going to unfilter that for a second because I want us to focus on the two statistics I have up top, average team size and percent co-located. Now, we know based on research that the ideal average team size is somewhere between 7 and 10 developers. So if I refilter on that rework path, I'll see here that average team size now jumps by a third up to 12.3 above that 10 developer threshold where we start to see the returns dropping. But what also is interesting is the percent located dropped from 60% down to 33%. Now, while a lower percent located means that you're able to work around the clock by having developers in different countries and different time zones, it does play a massive effect on collaboration, as it's a lot harder for a resource based in New York to have conversations with someone in Sydney because oftentimes their schedules just don't line up. Now, while I'm looking at those cases that have rework path, what's interesting is the youngest developers, or those with a tenure of up to 2 years, are the most common victims of that rework path. And if you recall, when I was showing the dashboard and we spoke about rework, one of the first thoughts that come to your mind is, well, maybe my developers are not as experienced. And you would be right. We're seeing that is definitely the case, and it's being shown to be true by Celonis. But when coupled with all the other information, such as average team size and percent co-located, it starts to tell a different story. Now it begins to tell a story of we're not giving our youngest developers the support and resources they need to be the best developers they can be. We're putting them on larger team sizes, similar to putting individuals in large classroom sizes. They're not getting that mentorship or that one-on-one coaching that they need from veteran developers to better excel and hone their craft. More so, it's even harder to communicate with other individuals on the team, and they may often feel lost in the tasks that are given to them because of how low the co-location score is. They may feel nervous not having anyone in the same office as them and constantly having to reach out to individuals who are more senior than them and also tend to be in a different location. Now, as we went through the 3 slides, what we've seen so far is how Celonis is able to help your organization measure key KPIs such as rework. We've then seen how when we dig into the Variant Explorer, we're able to start seeing some areas where execution gaps are appearing, such as that rework path, non-backlog items, and also delayed approvals. We dug in a little deeper and used some of the HR data that we're able to have to really hone the analysis and get a better view of what is really going on and start to determine the hypotheses on how to fix the situation that we're in. Now, the last thing I want to show you is how Celonis can use automation to close some of those gaps identified. And as I switch screens, we're going to focus on an automation that is built upon the idea of the late approvals. Now, this can obviously be created for any of the different gaps that we found, but I thought that this was one of the more simple ones to go through. So if a ticket is being closed without approval, we're first going to check whether or not this developer is consistently doing this or not. If it's their first offense, we're going to simply send them a Slack message saying, please do not do this again. It's best practice to go through all the proper channels, go through testing and get approval, because when bugs occur down the line, they become more costly. Now, if it's not this developer's first offense and we're seeing that this is a consistent trend with them, we're going to send an email to their manager so that they can have a conversation one-on-one with this individual. And then we'll also send a follow-up Slack message, just once again, explaining the policies. Now, as we conclude the demo, we have gone from starting to understand where we stand, picking areas in which we want to become better, diving in to understand how we can become better by finding out where are those key gaps, and then showing how Celonis can go full circle with our automation capabilities to go ahead and start to close those gaps.